early retirement through real estate investing. How does somebody retire early through real estate? Well, first off, it really depends on what your goals are. And I've done this for over 20 years. I've seen people retire and walk away. I've seen people have success and just keep going on no matter how much they've made. So whether real estate is a means to an end or something you want to continue to stay in the game forever, let's talk about how you can get there. First and foremost, the first question is, how do you define retirement? Well, really, there's two sides to this equation. I'm going to jump to the whiteboard because I want to make sure everybody's on the same page with this, okay? So there's two sides. There's your income and there's your expenses, okay? So one of the ways you can retire early is you can lower your expenses and increase your income. A lot of people do the opposite. A lot of people's expenses continue to go up and they're trying to make more money, but making more money doesn't keep up with the expenses that they're incurring as it goes on, because as they make more money, they increase their standard of living and they keep chasing and never get there. On the other side, you're gonna have somebody like Mr. Money Mustache who is like, I'm gonna live off $20,000 a year and live off the bare minimum. I'm not gonna have a car, I'm gonna ride my bike, I'm gonna, those types of things. Now, that works for some people. That's not exactly what I wanna do, but it works for a lot of people. And if that's the case, how do you get your expenses as low as possible? Because here's the thing, the lower those expenses are, the faster you'll have the ability to make that retirement. And the more expensive those expenses are on a monthly basis, the longer it's going to take because you're gonna have to earn a lot more money. Let me explain as we jump to the whiteboard, okay? So let's say your annual expenses are $20,000 a year. Well, how much cash flow are you gonna need to be able to do that? Well, about $1,800 a month, that's gonna get you there. Well, if you're making $500 a property, $300 a property, we're talking 3 to 5 homes in order for you to get the cash flow to get the $20,000. Well, no big deal. We can get you there, right? And you could probably get there in a few years. Maybe you buy a property a year, buy a property every other year, 3 to 5 years, you are there. But let's say that your expenses is somewhere around $100,000. Well, that's a heck of a lot of money. That's quite a bit more. Maybe your expenses are about $75,000, okay? So here's what I'm saying. Just be very deliberate as to what you want and what you want to spend. I see too many people that are saying, oh, I'm gonna buy a nice car, I'm gonna buy a nice this, I'm gonna buy nice this, I'm gonna buy nice this. That's awesome. But the problem is if you add all those things up, it gets pretty expensive. So I'm not saying you can't have this, you can't have a nice car, you can't have those things. I'm saying what's really important to you. I'll give you a perfect example. For me, one of the things that's important to me is travel. I love to travel with my family and I love to spend time with my family. So because of that, I drive a 10-year-old truck because I would rather spend my money in traveling than buying a really nice car. Now, maybe for you, a really nice car is more important to you than traveling. I get that. I spend a lot of money on travel that other people would say, you know what, that's just not for me, and having a cool car is what I want. There is no judgment here. I'm not saying what's better. I'm not saying what's worth. I'm saying, what do you want? Because what I find is a lot of people just try and keep up with the Joneses. They just see what their neighbor's doing and they're trying to do the exact same thing. I'm saying, hey, I just want whatever they have, or I want to keep up with them. No, none of that stuff matters. The question is what's most important to you and what is going to work for you. And then based upon that, what you want to do is build a budget. So here's what I call it. I call it the future budget. So we know about our expenses and everything else. What I say, I build a few budgets, right? So I have my worst case budget. This is if everything goes to crap. This is my worst case budget. Then I have my my okay budget. I can't remember what we call that, but it's like this isn't where we want to be. And then we've got our best case, and then we've got this year, what the year is, and then we've got our dream budget. Okay. Now, you're gonna say, Ryan, I can't even do one budget and you want me to do 5 budgets? Well, let me tell you, most people think of budgets as being restricting, and I look at budgets of being empowering. Because I'm basically saying, hey, if I was living my dream life, which I am, but if I was living my dream life, what would that look like and what would I need to spend to have that dream life? Now, again, the more you want to spend with that, the longer and harder it's going to take for you to get to that passive income. Now, the less that is, the less your standard of living will be, but the less time you'll need to actually get there. It's a balancing act, guys. You have to make that decision. What I find is most people aren't deliberate in what they want and what they want their life to look like. And so if you start with that dream budget and start looking at what those expenses are actually going to be for that dream budget, then you can reverse engineer your success. Then you can say, okay, okay, where am I at right now? Where do I want to go? What's the difference? And here's really what's happening. What I think the definition of retirement is how many days you can go without having to work again. Let me explain. Here's basically what we're saying. Okay, let's say that if your dream budget is $50,000 or $70,000, let's just use $70,000, okay? Let's just say your budget is $70,000. Well, if you have passive income of $10,000, okay, how far can you go? Well, you can go like a couple of months, okay? $10,000 a year. Now, let's say your passive income is $70,000 a year. Well, guess what? You are retired. If what you want to spend and what you are making in passive income equals each other, then you are officially retired. So you've got to know. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stop working. That doesn't mean you have to stop doing deals. That doesn't mean you stop buying real estate. What it means is you don't have to continue. You've decided how much you want to spend in your dream retirement. You're also having passive income that equals that. Anything extra that you get is just more that can be invested or donated to charity or whatever makes you happy you can do. Now, some people say, you know what? I got what I wanted. I'm good. I'm going to do some other things. No problem. Other people say, you know what, I've got what I wanted, but I really enjoy the game and I enjoy what I'm doing and I want to keep going with that. No problem at all. Again, that's a decision that you've got to make. So when we talk about retirement, we're talking about how many months you can go, how many days you can go without having to work again. And so if you know what that dream budget is on what you're wanting to spend to have the lifestyle that you want and be very deliberate with that, making sure you're doing things you really want and things that are really important to you. And I'm talking about how much are we going to spend in travel? How much am I going to spend in a car? What am I going to do with this? Like really thinking through, like if I had my dream life, what would it look like? Now, if your dream life is having private jets and limos and VIP access to everything, you're going to need a whole heck of a lot of money. And I can tell you that passive income to get to that type of level is pretty expensive. Don't know if you know this or not, but a private jet is going to run you $1 to $2 million a year just on maintenance, just on having people, just on having pilots. You know, that's pretty expensive. So you need at least $1 to $2 million a year just to do that. Now, the reason I say that is a lot of people think very rich people have all these luxurious things. And some of them do, but most of them don't. If you've ever read The Millionaire Next Door, it talks about all the millionaires and they wanted to interview millionaires and see what actually makes them tick. So they got a very nice penthouse suite in upper New York. They got caviar and all these nice things and they invited people in that were millionaires. Well, what they find pretty quickly is most of the millionaires were uncomfortable in a situation in a nice penthouse suite like that. Most of them didn't like and had never had caviar before, and most of them drove an old pickup truck or a few-year-old pickup truck, kind of like I do. So with all of that, they said, you know what? This is really about the millionaire next door. The idea of this super ultra rich, that is not the reality for the majority of millionaires. And just because they're a millionaire doesn't mean they have these crazy things, nor do they desire or want them. You see, I think a lot of this has to do with contentment. When are you really going to be happy? And I see a lot of people that have insatiable greed, right? It's just never enough for them and they have to keep going. It's kind of like when we look back on the Pirates of the Caribbean and we've got these pirates that can drink and eat and they never feel satisfied because it never quenches their thirst because they're dead, you know? So the issue, we don't want to turn into a pirate and that no matter how much money we make, it's never enough because that's the next thing that happens. Now, when I first started in real estate, I thought that if I had a couple $1,000s a month of passive income, I had made it. And then I said, oh, well, I need a little more than that. Okay, I need $5,000 and then I need $6,000, you know? And so it's a never ending game. The problem for me is I didn't have somebody sitting down and saying, what do you really want and what's important to you? And more importantly, why is that important to you? It's not about the things, it's about what the things allow you to do and what that does for you and what's most important. And then you can be very careful and deliberate about what's important and what's not. Then you can put together your dream budget. Now, I'll tell you, having done this with my own spouse, a lot of things were important to me weren't as important to her. A lot of guys or gals can get into this thing like, I'm doing all this work, I'm making all this money, I'm doing all for you. Quickly I realized I was actually just doing it for me. I wasn't doing it for her or for my family. I was doing it because of the accolades and the things that it brought me. Well, I've rethought that quite a bit. and I've changed some of the ways that I've done things, and I've re-altered what I'm looking for. And together with my spouse, with my partner, we have a united front about what our dream financial life looks like and what that will allow us to do and how much money we need to have coming in. Now, when we talk about this money, passive is so different than active income. Active income is how much you spend as a result of time and money on doing something. So if you're trading dollars for hours, you are basically in where you're having active income that's coming in. Passive income means it's going to come in no matter if you do something or don't do something. So this could be passive income, could be rental properties, or could be joint ventures, or could be limited partnerships or general partnerships, or it could be doing lending. There's a lot of different passive things. It could be owning a business that's bringing some passive money in. There's lots of ways for this passive income. My favorite, obviously, is real estate. The question is, how many properties do you really need to have to be comfortable on a month-to-month basis if that is your goal? Well, let's jump over to my whiteboard and let me give you an example. I talk to a lot of people about retiring in 10 years or less, and people say, well, how is that even possible? I'm going to show you a strategy that can do just that. Let's jump over to the whiteboard. Okay, so there's this idea called dollar cost averaging. Most people refer to this when they're buying stocks. And here, let me give you the stock example, and then we'll jump into the real estate example. So let's say a stock is at $10, and then it goes up to $12, and then it goes up to $15, and then it goes down to $9, and then it goes down to $8, and then it goes up to $16, okay? So let's say that you bought 100 shares in each of these increments. Not 1,000, 100, okay? So you're buying shares in these increments. So the idea with this is you're buying consistently over a time, and you're not trying to time the market. You're like, okay, the first of every single month or the last of every single month or once a year, I'm gonna buy this many shares for whatever the current price is. Well, this idea of dollar cost averaging is how much are you into these? Well, you're into this one 16, this one 10, this one 12. Well, what typically happens is you can say, okay, here's my handy dandy calculator. I bought it at 10, I bought it at 12, I bought it at 15, I bought it at 9, I bought it at 8, and I bought it at 16. Okay, so divide that by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, divided by 6. My dollar cost average in all of these is actually $10. So rather than trying to time the market or change the market, rather than saying, oh, I'm gonna buy a lot now or buy a lot later, the idea is I'm just gonna buy on a continual basis as things go, and overall, my overall dollar cost average, the average of what I'm into this stock, is gonna be at a pretty good average because I'm consistently buying. Now, did I pay too much in some areas? Yes. Did I pay a lot less in other areas? Yes, but the average or the aggregate is the dollar cost average. We can do this exact same thing with real estate. So hold on to your shorts. Let me show you how this works. So let's just say that you're buying a property, and let's say you buy a property one a year for 10 years. So we get year 1, year 2, year 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, I'm just going to do this for example purposes. I do not want everybody to be like, oh, your math's all wrong and that type of stuff. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to actually just give you an idea of a philosophy, a concept, a way of doing things. This is what I want to share with you today. Okay, so here's basically what we say. Let's say houses in the area are 200,000. And so you buy that house for 200,000, okay? And let's say the next year house prices go up to 210,000. By the way, about a 3 to 5% increase is what we're seeing over time. And then let's say they go up again, maybe they go up a lot and they go up to like 220. And then let's say the house price goes up to 230. And then let's say it comes down to 190, and then it comes down to 180. And then let's say it hits 170. And then let's say prices come back up to 200. And then let's say prices go to 230. And then let's say they come to 250 or something. So basically you've bought a property a year every single year for 10 years, okay? So that's basically what you've done here. Well, what have you done? You've dollar cost averaged these, okay? So if you look at all these 10 properties, let's see how much you're into them. 200,000, whoops, we're just gonna do easy math here. 210, 220, 230, 190, 180, 170, 200, 230, plus 250, divided by 10. So your average cost for these properties, you're going to be into them $208,000 is what you're going to be averaged into these properties. But there are a couple of forces here that people just don't think a lot about. Now, let's talk about a few of those. One is over time, rents increase. Okay, rents increase over time. They just do. Now, is there ups and downs and ups and downs? Yes, but the trajectory is rents are going up. It's just going to happen, okay? The other thing is property values are going to go up as well. They're just going to. Now, is there ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs? Absolutely. But if you look from 10 years ago till now or 15 years ago, if you choose the time frame, you are going to see an upward trajectory in rents and you're going to see an upward trajectory in values. All right, so what I've got here is the historic median rents over time. So you can see in 1940, the average rents were $27, and you can see in 2020, the average rent is $1,104. Have there been some ups? Have there been some downs? Absolutely. I want to point out here the 2008, 2009, 2010 real estate crisis. One of the interesting things you'll see here is 2008, 9, 10, 15, rents went up. Okay, lots of people are like, oh no, what will happen if there's a real estate downturn? Well, usually if there is, rents go up. So that's something to take into consideration. But you can see since 1940 to 2020, rents have skyrocketed over time. Even if you just want to take it from 2000 of 523 to 2020, you're basically, rents have doubled over that period of time, okay? So if rents are doubling over a 10-year period, how much are they increasing per year on average? Well, let's do some handy dandy math on this and tell you how that works, okay? So if rents are going from 500, let's do exact actually, guys. Let's do, if rents were 523, and that was in about 95, 90, somewhere between 97 and 2000. Okay, and now we're talking about 2020 and an average, this is average median rents all across the country, right? You may be saying, oh, well, that's really expensive, or you may be saying that's really, really cheap. Well, so if we take 520 or 1104 divided by 523, okay, so it's it's almost doubled, okay? So basically we're gonna say 1104 minus 523 is the increase. It went up 581, which is more than doubling what it is. So if it's doubling every single year, or it's 100% divided by 20 years, it's basically going up 5% per year. Okay, so let's do some more math on this, my favorite thing, and my son Taggart's favorite thing. Okay, so here's the idea. Let's say the average rent you've got on this property is $100,000. So, okay, I mean, we gotta move this over. We're at 208 is our average, okay? That's what our dollar cost average is per property. So now we're gonna talk about rent, okay? Rents. Well, so this year, rent's $1,000. Just to keep our numbers really simple, really easy, times 0.05 basically, times it's going to go up by 5%, so it's going to go by $50. So this year rent's going to go up to $1,050, rent's going to go up to $1,100, rent's going to go up to $1,150. I mean, I'm doing this simple. It's going to go up a little more than this. Let's just go. I'm doing increments of 50, but it's really going to go up about 5%. So at $1,250, let me get my calculator, times 0.05 plus 1,250, you know, so it's going to be 1,312, you know, so I'm just kind of doing this as simple, times 0.05. Okay, so you're adding $65 to the 1,312, and you're looking at $1,377, right? Same thing. And I was just jumping by 50s here, but if you want to do the actual, add that 1,377, okay? So, whoops, 1,377 times 0.05. I don't want to bore you with all the math here. So I'm just gonna, okay, that's 1,445, and we're gonna call this 1,450 when we get here. So I'm just doing this very simply, guys, but here's the thing that most people simply do not understand, okay? What happens is, it's not just this property is gonna be rented at 1,450. All of these houses, we're assuming the house is all the same, you know, all the same thing. Now, all 10 of your houses are going to be rented at $1,450. So 10 times $1,450, what does that equal? Well, we add a zero, it's $14,500 that is coming in a month. Now, you do have expenses, you've got taxes, you've got insurance, and you've got your payment. But wait, let's talk about this, guys. What happens to these things? Well, a lot of people don't think about this. As you pay taxes, you're able to write off, you're able to depreciate the property, which is going to help with your active income in lowering your costs that you're going to be paying in taxes. Insurance is going to be a write-off, and any repairs you're going to be doing to the property are going to be a write-off as well. But the big thing is property values go up over time as well. Back in 1965, the median price per house was $19,400, and you can look here at 2021, the median price was $423,000. Well, let's just simply take a 10-year period. We go from 2010, it's 220, and it's up at 423. So it's literally doubled over that period of time. Let's come back here. This is a 2010 to 2005, 153 to 220. That didn't quite double. It went up about 40%. If we come from here, what do we got? 163 to 117. So if we just want to do this from 1990, the average median price in 1990 was 100. Let's just call it 120,000. Okay, that was the average price in 1990. And if we look at where prices are today, our average price is around 423,000. Okay, so if you look at that on my handy dandy whiteboard, 1990, we're going to say property values were 121,000. Okay, and 2020, we're going to say property values, median property values were 428,000. Okay, so what we want to figure out is over this 30-year period, how much did the price increase? And so what we're going to do is we're going to take 428,000 and we're going to subtract that by 121,000, which is going to mean there was an increase of $307,000. Okay, now if we divide that by 3 years, we're basically getting an increase of about $102,000 per year. Now, if we want to divide that per 10 years, okay, guys, 10 years, sorry. If you want to divide that by what we were into the property, we're basically saying, hey, 121 divided by 102,000, which is basically what's going up every year. It's going up about, let's subtract 100. It's going up 98% a year is basically what we're, every 10 years. I keep saying a year. Every 10 years, every decade, it's going about 98% somewhere in there. Now, I'm not doing this as a math quiz, so my boys don't have to double check all this and tell me where I was wrong. Again, I'm teaching a principle here. So let's say, this is interesting. Let's say property values are going up in this same scenario that we're talking about, that they're going to go up about $100,000 a year. Or every 10 years. It's going to go up about $100,000 every 10 years, okay? So $100,000 over 10 years. Okay, we're going to divide that out, and how much is that? It's about $10,000 a year. Okay, so now let's talk about how much property values have actually gone up here. Okay, property values, well, the value for this property hasn't gone up at all. So this is appreciation. Okay, appreciation, that hasn't gone up at all. This one has gone up. We just bought this one. That one's been $10,000. We've had that a year. This one's gone up 2 years, so it's 20,000. This has gone up 3 years, it's 30,000. This one's gone up 4 years, so it's 40. 5 years, so it's 50. 6 years, so it's 60. 7 years, so it's 70. 8 years, so it's 80. 9 years, so it's $90,000. Now, does this mean it's going to go up this amount every single year? No, we looked at the graph. It goes up, it goes down, but the trajectory is always heading in an upward direction. But this is where it gets really exciting, okay? This is where the rubber hits the road. Look at your value in your properties, okay? So basically, you have $90,000 worth of equity. We'll just assume the property was $200,000. We're going to dollar cost average these. So your average price was $208,000. I'm going to add the 90. That means this property is worth $298. Okay, and this one is worth $288. This one is worth $278. This one is worth $268. This one is worth $258. This one is worth $248. This one is worth $238. This one's worth $228. This one's worth $218, and this one's worth $208, just because we dollar cost average those in, right? So let's look at this. How much is all of that, and how much equity do I now have? Let's get our handy dandy calculator. I'm trying to put it somewhere you guys can see it without blocking the view. We got $298 plus $288 plus $278 plus 268 plus, plus 258 plus 248 plus 238 plus 228 plus 218 plus 208 equals, and if I divide that by 10, so it's 2.53 million is the total. 2.53. That is the value of real estate. But guess what? How much did I pay for the real estate? Well, my dollar cost average was 208. 2 million is basically what I paid for it. So I've got an extra $500,000. Okay, $500,000 in equity. Now you'd be saying, oh, well, Ryan, that's not a ton of equity. I understand, but that's where the next principle really comes in that most people don't realize. So guess what? Every single month that payment's being made, it's paying your loan down. So your first loan that you took out on a 30-year loan is a third of the way paid down. So you actually have a lot more equity than you may think you do. Let's talk about this. So let's say the average price was $200,000. It's a 30-year loan and you have 5% interest rate. I'm just throwing some numbers out there, okay? So after 10 years, because you're gonna see this is going all the way to a 30 years. So if I come to 10 years, I now owe $162,000 on that property, which means on this property that I bought, I have an additional, they'll just call it $40,000 of equity. I'm gonna change colors. I'm gonna write these down so you guys can see this. So this is from the tenant paying down. Let's don't use red. I would need something you can read, which probably isn't that one. The tenants are paying down. Pay down. So this is called amortization pay down. So you've got an extra $40,000 on this one. In year 9, you've got 67, let's see, 40. So you've paid that one down. So you owe about 170. So you've got about $38,000 of equity in that one from the pay down plus what you have already in the increase. We've got a 179. So you've got about 23,000. You've got about 20,000. So it's just gonna get a little bit less and a little bit less. So I'm just gonna say 19, 17, 16, 15, 14, 12. I'm just doing this for simple math, guys, because I don't wanna lose you in this equation that we are talking about here. So let's look at those. Well, what if the tenant paid down the rents along the way? So the tenant paid down 40, and then the other tenant paid down 38, and the other tenant paid down 23, and the other tenant paid down 20, and the other tenant paid down 19, and the other tenant paid down 17, and the other tenant paid down 16, and the other tenant paid down 15, and the other tenant paid down 14, and the other paid down 13. Okay, this isn't exact science, but you've got about $200,000 in pay down, which means you now have over $700,000 of equity in these properties. Now, you've got a couple of options here, guys. If you have $700,000 worth of equity in these properties, you could sell all and pay off a few. So like you owe $160,000 on this one. So you would have these first 3 that you owe the least amount on. So let's just say those are 160. Let's take 700,000 divided by 160. Okay, so you could pay off more than 4 of these properties. So if you sold everything, you paid off these first 4 properties right here, these would all be free and clear, which means you would have $1,450 coming in times 4. So you would have $5,800 coming in every single month. Now you are gonna have taxes and you are gonna have insurance. That's coming in every single month like clockwork, and you own all these properties free and clear. So let's say we take off, I don't know, 20%, 25%. So 1,450 times 0.75 times 4, you've basically got $4,350 coming in every single month, which is equivalent to $52,000 a year. Guys, with all of this, I've tried to give a pretty conservative example. I've used simple math. If you do this more complex, you'll see this is actually quite a bit more. You're probably gonna be closer to 1 million or maybe 1.2. We don't know what's gonna happen in the market other than we've seen over the last 30 years, it has gone up. Even over since 1960, since the time we started tracking, it has gone up. So what we don't wanna be doing is playing the market. What we wanna be doing is dollar cost averaging into properties. Now, you may say, Ryan, 50 grand doesn't get me there. Let's say, I understand that. So why don't you buy 2 properties a year, this would double that and you would end up with $2 million. And instead of having $50,000 a year, you'd have $104,000 a year. Again, I think some of these are actually pretty conservative examples that we're talking about. And if you wanted to do this for 20 years instead of cutting off at 10, it gets even more exciting because each time the tenant pays a payment on the property, it gets paid down more. And if you've had it paid down for 20 years, you're going to have a ton more equity in these properties, and then you could sell or you could keep them all. You've got options at this point. The issue is getting on the track to make something happen. So you may be saying, okay, Ryan, I like it, I understand it, but how am I gonna get doing this? I've got to put some money down. Well, there's a couple of options here. Number one, you can take money from your 401k and buy a property with that if you turn it into a self-directed. That's a great way to do it. Another thing you can do is take money from your house and a line of credit and use that money as a down payment towards another property. Now, if you do what's called a burst strategy, where what you're basically doing is buying the property with hard money, using money to fix it up, and refinancing, you probably can get some of that money out, or you can do a full refinance and not have any of your money in. Now, that's an ideal scenario. Does that always happen? No, it doesn't always happen, but that's a way that you can do it as well. The other thing you can do is save some money, set some money aside, and use that money as a down payment to make these things happen. And you could also get into something where you are finding these properties and taking them over subject to. There's lots of ways to get into this. So you can start your path to long-term wealth through creating real estate inside my Find Fun Flip system. As a matter of fact, in the system, we're going to talk about wholesaling and flipping properties, which is another way that you can come up with some money to then use as a down payment when you're buying some rental properties. Our Find Fun Flip system is an all-in-one. It helps you through every step from finding your first deal all the way through selling your finished rehabs. So check out our system by clicking on the link below on this very page and make it a very profitable day.